Hey, we might be a small crew in this session, but we're quality. Good morning, Chaplain, and good morning, Craig. It's good to see you guys.
Good morning. Just as long as you don't give me extra shots.
We might talk about them, but I won't give you any.
Okay. Been there, done that, and don't want the second one to go along with it there.
Okay, let me see if I can get this to work. So the session is being recorded for folks who can't join us live today, but you just need to know that. And my internet connection, of course, has been a little bit finicky this morning, so if I freeze, I'm not having a seizure or a stroke or anything, it's my internet connection. Okay, can you see the presentation there?
Yes. Yes, sure can.
Okay, well, I got 10:45. We'll go ahead and get started. This has been an extremely busy year where health services stuff is concerned in the West Virginia wing. And so we're going to talk about kind of what's been done, some of the opportunities for where we're going. I'll give a little insights into the development of the health services specialty track and the new regs that will be coming out at some point in the future. We've been waiting on these things for a long time. And we're going to talk about the future. You know, what the future holds, what resources our HSOs have utilized successfully, and what they need in the future to really kind of get something out of the specialty as well as put something into it in service of the organization and the state. So I guess it's nice to be needed in a way. We've been very, very busy. One of the biggest things that health service officers were involved in this year was encampment planning, and we did have an encampment, and I think a relatively successful one, considering we had attendance restrictions and meeting location restrictions and restrictions of all kinds to have to try to deal with. But we actually started planning the health side of this back in 2020. I was originally tasked to serve as an HSO for the joint North Carolina, Virginia winter encampment, which of course subsequently was canceled because of the surge in COVID at that time. But I got to network with a whole lot of very interesting and very motivated and educated folks, and took a lot of the best practice stuff from them and turned it over and used it in our own plan development. So that was good. I have been continuously working with the remobilization team. Anytime we need to move up in a phase, or there's a question about meeting and restrictions, and it's been a continuous thing. It is probably, well, it's going on 2 years now, which is hard to believe. And despite it all, we have gotten things done. We have now 3 first aid CPR AED instructors that utilize the Red Cross curriculum to train our members, including 2 wilderness first aid instructors. We started planning a wilderness first aid course at the end of 2020. And we're going to launch one here this fall, which again, with the COVID surge, had to be postponed. But we're looking now at maybe in the spring having a dedicated course that focuses on a wilderness first aid curriculum. We might fold it into the MESA, the yearly MESA training. We have to figure out a date that's going to kind of work for everybody. We've been involved in the basic and advanced mountaineer training that Major Ploss and Major Kathy Dawson have been working with. And that was a real experience to get out and get some boots on the ground and get some experience with some ground teams to see what they really need insofar as training in a wilderness environment. I've been continuing to work with our pilots and air crews as their unofficial AME, and have been open for consults and medicals, and I think that that's a service that folks have found valuable. We'll continue to do that as long as it's possible. This year, the West Virginia encampment actually had a cadet first aid support team. This was another thing that we pulled as a best practice item from North Carolina, Virginia, and I think it went really well. Again, in a limited meeting, a limited volume, COVID limited environment, I think it's going to be something that's going to grow and add to the cadet cadre and our encampments. New this year also, we have the West Virginia Wing Health Services Scholarship, and I'm going to get into some details about that. And upcoming in 2022 is going to be the Wing Health Services internship as a pilot project, hopefully for a National Cadet Special Activity. We'll get into that here in a minute. This is in here to remind you, you got to live, you got to have a life, and this was taken from the overlook there at the Cranberry Wilderness when we were at the Cranberry Glades event. Beautiful country, and it's easy to get lost in country like this, and so training in country like this is very important. The carpet of moss that Colonel Moody alluded to in the general session is several inches thick. I mean, you can lie down on it and go to sleep, and it's very comfortable. A beautiful country. Shows that, yeah, we can get out and enjoy things and have fun while we're training and getting things done for the organization. So our scholarship. So congratulations goes out to Lieutenant Craig Wicks, of course, from Parkersburg, who is a recipient this year, as well as Cadet Lieutenant Jessica Allen from Fredericksburg Composite Squadron in Virginia, who submitted applications and were accepted this year. So the Health Services Scholarship was established to help to develop the skill set of health service officers in the state, and increase and support cadet interest in the health sciences, which we were very gratified to get some applications here in its first year. All of the details for the scholarship are on the West Virginia Wing webpage under the scholarships tab. But some of the details are that right now, at its current level of funding, it provides for up to $500 per applicant per year. And as people continue to donate to this fund and the fund expands, the scholarship committee will probably be either expanding the amount of the awards given or the number of the awards given every year based on the needs in the applications. 31 March is the deadline for the 2022 application season, so mark your calendars. But there is a long list of things that we would consider applying this scholarship toward, and that's about a page and a half of suggestions that are there on that published guidance document on the website. So check that out if you've not seen it already. One of the things that it would be great to get is if we have another doc in the wing who wants to become an AME. So this is something that scholarship would definitely help cover the expense for, and has been one of the greatest continuing medical education things that I have attended. It's a week-long course in Oklahoma City. We'll fly out to the CAMI and hang out with flight surgeons and a bunch of FAA guys and do a lot of cool stuff. But it's a great way to expand one's professional skill set, especially if you're a pilot. You'll learn a lot by going through this process. It's been a little over 2 years that I've been an AME. I find it very, very professionally rewarding. I enjoy it a lot. For those who are non-physicians, one of the things that we've been trying to promote is membership in the Wilderness Medicine Society. So in the Wilderness Medical Society, there is a fellowship that can be applied for, and you don't have to be a physician or even a clinician to apply for this. And the WMS is a great resource for continuing education. They have connections with a lot of different resources. Wilderness, you can become a wilderness medicine instructor, as well as get all your certifications: wilderness first aid, wilderness first responder, wilderness EMT. There's the fellowship. There is a diploma in mountain medicine. There is a diploma in marine and diving medicine. So if you're an outdoors person and you're in the health sciences, check out the WMS. They have a lot of different resources and a lot of really good down-to-earth medical education available on their website. So membership in professional societies like this is something that we would also consider applying scholarship money toward. So a word about the internship. We started working on this early this year as a pilot project, potentially for a National Cadet Special activity. We will need to run it locally for 2 years and gather some performance data to send it up to national before we can call it an NCSA. But what it is, it's designed to stimulate interest in careers in health sciences and to introduce cadets to the professional mentorship process. We've designed it to be essentially a 1 week long, essentially 40-hour clinical rotation. 2 slots will be filled every week for 4 weeks. And of course that can be expanded as demand increases. And the goal is to set this up in such a way that we can publish a standard curriculum to anyone who's interested in being a preceptor for these kinds of things. So the first 2 years will be us kind of working out what that curriculum is supposed to be. We're going to try to make it as diverse as possible in the first 2 years and include exposure to inpatient care, outpatient medical care, and as many allied specialties as we can. So some of the requirements that we've been kicking around are listed there. One of the biggest things is probably going to be the interview. We will have to interview our preceptors as well as our applicants, because going in and working in a clinical environment, especially as a Civil Air Patrol member, carries with it a lot of responsibility with respect to professionalism and what's expected. So that's coming. That's very exciting. That's taken a lot of work. And some of it has been tabled as a function of COVID restrictions, but hopefully with some light at the end of the tunnel, we'll be moving forward with those initiatives. Very exciting. So CapReg 79.1 is still in the works, and your guess is as good as mine when we will really see it come out. However, we have a new national commander. So does that change priorities? Will we have an ETA on this getting finished sometime soon? Your guess, again, is as good as mine, but we're watching it very closely. In any event, there's a lot in here that we can begin to implement before the final reg comes out, and we'll talk about it in very general terms as we go through this presentation, as well as some of the specialty track guidance that's coming through. Probably the most visible part of the new regs will be the forms that all the non-HSO people end up in hand. And we won't go through those. No doubt they'll go through several revisions before we see them. But there's a lot of opportunities here, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about some of this today. So as we go through the evolution of this process, I guess my question to you and to all our HSOs are, what do you want to do? You might not want to do health services stuff all the time, it being your day job. And in a follow-up to that, I guess the question is, what do you not want to do? In any case, there are a lot of ways that we can integrate into these other dimensions of the organization and expand our skill set, but also do something that's a little bit different and enjoyable. So as we go through these 5 dimensions, I kind of want you to frame it in those terms. What do you want to do? What do you not want to do? What would you like to see in the future for your service as a health service officer in the wing? So just briefly, cadet programs stuff is going to be focused on HSOs getting involved with cadet fitness, health promotion, and reviewing accommodations where physical training is concerned. Aerospace education, there's a lot of opportunities here, some of which I've already mentioned, with aeromedical education, review, aircrew fitness, focusing on some preventative types of education. Professional development has changed a lot in the last year with the new E&T program, and the new regs are supposed to give us some vetted types of lecture material when it comes to leadership support. And we'll talk about some of the health promotion stuff that's already available to use and explore. Safety kind of goes hand in hand with being an HSO. We're always kind of extending the capacity of our safety officers, and we'll talk about some specifics as we go through. And again, emergency services, another one of those things. It kind of goes hand in hand with being an HSO. There's a lot of opportunity for getting involved in being a trainer, in working with the incident command structure. The new reg talks about this mission health service officer as a new position that'll be integrated, but lots of opportunities there. We'll go through some of them kind of briefly here. So, you know, the cadet program section, there's actually a fitness officer. You can serve as a fitness officer in the cadet programs track, as well as a dedicated DDR officer. HSOs can also integrate by serving as a leadership officer. You know, you take your professional experience and give cadets practical examples of how you incorporate the core values of the organization into your profession. We kind of do it naturally all the time, but sitting down and thinking about it and talking about it is kind of a different thing. But if you like to teach, if you like cadets, here is an opportunity to be able to interact and to educate and support the future of our organization. And a lot of this focuses on preventative health education, as you'll see as we go through here. But something to think about cadet programs wise. If aerospace is your thing, become an AEO. The Fit for Flying program is a good example of an AE resource that's right up in HSO's alley. This was something that was originally designed as part of the DDR program, but it's on the cadet library page. I'll kind of show you where it's at. It's actually very well done, and believe it or not, the curriculum is mirrored after the basic aerospace physiology curriculum that the AME basic seminar covers. It was something that was put together in cooperation with an AME, and so that's no surprise to me. Some of the data in there is a little bit dated, but it's all very good. It's very well put together, and this is going to be something that's integrated into our specialty track when it comes to advancement once the new regs get launched. So this isn't something that's just for cadets. This is something for internal AE, for adults, for pilots, would find it, I think, very informative. Another thing that we can use in the way of resources is the AOPA website. Great resource for pilots, great resource for answering medical questions. If you've not ever looked at it, look at it. It's a great resource for pulling down basic things to be able to do some basic education. You know, do a 10-minute talk on something, very easy to do. Here's where it is on the cadet library, the cadet programs library. There's an actual presentation. There's the quizzes in multiple sections. There's an instructor's guide and there's a student's guide. But it's very well done. Other than being a little bit dated, I'm sure it'll get an update. Check it out. It's a good tool to use. Professional development. So again, this is something that's developed a lot in the last year. And there will be some structure to the professional development resources that HSOs bring to their squadron insofar as command culture and toxic attitudes and such like. Not seen anything yet, but it's in the works. As well as providing some wellness and preventative education to our senior members. Some of that kind of comes naturally with our safety hat, ear protection, but it's nice to have a little bit more insofar as structured resources when these kinds of things come through. So that's what I'm hoping that we'll see is we'll get some content to be able to deliver. It's not hard to get credentialed as a VOLU instructor either. And trying to do online cohorts is a little bit tough sometimes. I just recently finished level 4. I did most of level 3 through the online cohort, and it wasn't fun. It took a lot of time, a lot of back and forth. So if you can get credentialed and just do face-to-face stuff, there's a lot that you can take from your professional experience and apply in professional development. HSOs are safety extenders by default. HSOs and mission safety officers are going to be collaborating a lot more closely, I think, with the introduction of the final 79.1, because it's going to encompass some of the requirements for us to advance in our specialty tracks. But this is something that kind of comes naturally for everyone. If you're an HSO and you're not in the safety track, consider it. A lot of it comes naturally. You don't have to be the squadron safety officer You can be the assistant, and you can help them a lot in ways that come very naturally to us. Emergency services has kind of always been our bread and butter. There are a bunch of service positions that HSOs can fill in the emergency services track. You can, if you're into disaster response, you can be the disaster preparedness officer. If you have ground team qualifications, and specifically if you're an instructor, a skills evaluator, be the ES training officer or an assistant ES training officer. If search and rescue is your thing, be a SAR officer or an assistant. One of the things that'll kind of help understand how we can integrate into all of this is do ICS 300 and 400 if you haven't done it. One of the things that the pandemic has done is provided a lot of online training, and ICS 300 and 400 are typically 2-day in-person courses, but there have been a lot of them done virtually and done very well. So keep your eyes open for those and get those done. It'll help to kind of inform how we can support incident commanders, air ops branch directors, ground branch directors, and mission staff if we're actually responding to an incident or part of that command staff. We always need first aid instructors, first aid and BLS instructors, as well as wilderness first aid instructors. The problem with this has always historically been the cost. We've had to rely on an outside source for training. It's been an out-of-pocket expense, and it's a commitment of time and money. National's working group is looking at coming up with a first aid training plan specifically with those kinds of things in mind. Now, there's all different kinds of problems with that, and we're all still chewing away at it. But right now, if you have that opportunity, you have that credential, it's a very useful skill to have. Encampment Health Services, oh yes. This is something that that will always keep you hopping, and it is really nice to have more than one or two people doing it, especially in large venues like West Virginia. But it's a great opportunity for us to interact with the cadet population and with now a FAST team to do some education and to help to teach along the way during encampment service. Teaching first aid, again, I mentioned, especially something like wilderness first aid, if that's something that you're into and would teach a class once or twice a year, go for it. It'll be a great asset to add for our wing. So going back to that original question, what do you want to do? What do you like? What do you not want to do anymore? Like talk about COVID. In any case, kind of think in terms of how can we get some stuff out of this too. We need some professional satisfaction as well in our volunteer service. So kind of be thinking as we move forward and as we get more details, how you would like to integrate the services moving forward. We'll go into a little of the specialty track stuff here shortly, but does anyone have any questions first? Okay. There are 4 categories of HSOs in the new reg, but it doesn't matter. An HSO is an HSO. The only difference categorically is which badge you wear. There's a medical badge, there's a nurse badge, there's an EMT badge, and then there's a general HSO badge. I put this up here because I'm really impressed with just the diversity of professionals on this list. I am a collaborator by nature. Not the political kind, the medical kind. I do inpatient, I do outpatient, I do hospice, I do aerospace. I'm talking with all of these people. I talk with dentists, maybe not with veterinarians all that often, but everybody else on this list I interact with to some degree. And they all bring different perspectives. A lot of very smart people in many, many areas, and a lot of very experienced people in many areas have lots of things to contribute. So I'm very excited to see that this is a net that's going to be cast wide. We have a lot of opportunity for recruiting a lot of different skill sets into the specialty, and I look forward to that. So just a brief word on the specialty track. So there's 3 levels, just like any other specialty track. Right now, it's just a commander assigned grade. And here's kind of the preview of what the new requirements are going to be. Everything that's coming down from national so far has said that if you have a current rating in the health services track, it should be grandfathered in. If you don't have a rating and you are an HSO, talk to your commander about getting one now to be grandfathered in before all of this stuff takes effect. If you've completed GES, if you can teach some basic health and wellness stuff, if you've completed level 1 and you've served 6 months time and grade, that's a tech rating. If you're a professional student, if you're a medical student, a nursing student, or whatever student, you can enroll in the HS track. Now, professional students are limited to not advancing beyond the technician rating until after they get their certification, but that doesn't mean that they can't get rated now. Senior HSOs, senior rated HSOs should be able to teach first aid, have taken some advanced risk management courses, have served on a group or higher level activity staff, and completed level 2 and served 12 months time and grade. And you can see the master stuff there. Teach BLS, not just first aid. Lead a seminar like this. Get a safety rating, complete PD level 3, and serve 18 months. So if you don't have a rating, talk to your commander. If there's a question about it and you think that you fit in one of these categories, then have them reach out to me. I'll talk them through it, and we'll see what's appropriate. But this is a means by which we can also kind of advance through our other professional development levels. Any questions on that? Right. Well, we can't talk about the state of health services in West Virginia without talking about this, COVID. And what a nightmare. And it's hard to believe as we've been going on 2 years with this stuff. A lot of planning, a lot of challenges met. Winston Churchill said, when you are going through hell, keep going. And that's what we've done. We have pushed through and we have met a lot of different challenges. Now, if I had a choice to take COVID-19 over this guy, I'd take this guy, COVID-19. Different problem. Unless he's in my garden, maybe not so much. But let's talk about where we've been and where we're going. So pretty much all our HSOs fall in this category of essential workers. Essentially anybody who can't do their job totally virtually. If you're an in-person person, you're an essential person. And we all, I think, probably fit that category. Even when we were going through the shutdown phase back last spring, I couldn't shut my clinic completely down. We had acute care stuff. You know, we had lungs we had to listen to. We had oxygen sats that we had to measure. We had clinical care that had to happen face to face. So this applies to a lot of different people, and a lot of the principles here apply to people that are outside of the HAS specialties equally. And it's been perilous, the fight over the last 2 years. It has been an uphill fight, and there have been casualties. And professionally and personally, I know that many of us have had them, but we're still in it. We are still in the fight. Right now, it sucks to be in healthcare because the capacities of our traditional medical systems have all been exceeded, and it has been an out of the frying pan and into the fire consideration, going from one challenge to the next, you know, week to week, if not day by day. And our population, our HSOs, are at high risk. We are at risk for physical exhaustion, all kinds of health problems. We are working under this continuous threat of infection and transmission of illness to our loved ones, illness and death of our colleagues and coworkers. I'm actually covering for one of my colleagues this week who has COVID, and lots of casualties, loss of many patients. With this last surge, just this week in my own patient population, I've had 4 that we've lost. It's been difficult to provide family-centered care for those who are sick and terminally ill, with visitation restrictions and trying to deal with symptom management. Chronic disease management has gone right out the window because you're running around putting out fires. You don't have time or resources to do all the regular stuff, blood pressure, diabetes, all that good stuff. Staffing problems galore in every sector. Nursing has been particularly hard hit. That, of course, affects the amounts of units that can be staffed, what our students are getting done, the quality of their education and getting certifications done. You're constantly garbed up in PPE and worried about who's going to get the ventilator. Fortunately, locally, we've not had too much of a trouble with resource rationing. We've come close. We've come to the point where we've had to transport people away to other facilities, but it's never got to that critical mass yet. We're very fortunate there. And you deal with a lot of different types of distress. These types of things, they show you that there are still racial and socioeconomic disparities with providing care to people. That offends our sense of justice. We don't like that. It's been a constant challenge to keep up with all the emerging science and what's working and what's available and all your local procedures. And I don't know about you, but the big fight lately has been defeating misinformation and standing up against this sense of mistrust and hostility that I've not really experienced before trying to help people. It takes a lot of patience. We've had to adapt everything. And so I think pretty much across the board for our HSOs and your professional lives, we're working harder, we're taking risks, we're making less money unless you're a travel nurse, and we have less resources to deal with. There are so many uncertainties in our day-to-day operations that this creates a lot of stress. As I mentioned before, we're a population that's already at risk. COVID aside, between a third and almost a half of critical care clinicians have some form of burnout that they report. Data from a Chinese study that was originally done earlier this year and then supported by a systematic review of 13 other studies showed that amongst the general clinical population, 50% reported struggling with depression, 45% with anxiety, a third of us can't sleep, and almost 3/4 reported some manner of distress. Distress being defined as emotional response, anxiety, sorrow, pain, dealing with that to some degree as a function of this crisis. What we don't know is the long-term effects. What does this do to the workforce? What does this do to your quality of working life? Many people might be considering changing professions. It's not outside the realm of possibility. Long-term effects remain to be seen. A 2-year marathon. Okay, so I'm a history buff and I think we can learn from history. So the context of the marathon, the Battle of Marathon, 490 BC, is between a outnumbered Athenian army and the Persians. And the legend goes that at the Persians' defeat by the Athenian army, a Greek herald named Phidippides saw that there was a Persian ship who was turning towards Athens. He interpreted that as an attempt to rush to the capital and claim a false victory because the Persians outnumbered the Athenians dramatically. So he takes off, he leaves Marathon, he runs to Athens, 26.2 miles. He makes it to Athens. He exclaims, "We have won!" And he falls over dead. This was us at the beginning of the pandemic. We were ready to go. We were fit. We were prepared. We can do this. We've got this. We all were patting each other on the back. A lot of encouragement. We can push. This is us now. There's less of us, and we're toast. This has been a marathon, and it's not over. So what I want to talk about as we wind this down is you taking care of you. We have to take care of ourselves if we're going to take good care of our patients. And the first and best way to teach other people about preventative health is to lead by example. So as I've been looking through studies with how people cope with all of this, probably about 30% of healthcare workers report that they use some form of exercise as a means of reducing stress. And this is great. You use a healthy adaptive mechanism to reduce stress. Establishing and maintaining healthy habits is critical. And we all do unhealthy things like caffeine here, working on it. But you have to limit it, and you have to limit all that other bad stuff. You have to make sure that you're sleeping right. Good sleep hygiene, diet, exercise are all preventative maintenance for you. And sleep deprivation is a real thing. You know, it works like your brain kind of works like your computer. You leave the computer on for too many days in a row. Eventually it slows down, you get the blue screen of death, and then it doesn't do anything. Well, we're the same way, about a million times more complex. Got to make sure that we're resting. It's the time that we recharge our body and our brain to meet the challenges of the next day. Our mental well-being is a big thing. And I've certainly caught myself asking the question, why, over the last 2 years. So it helps to try to cultivate a context of these struggles and to have some kind of mechanism to ground what we're experiencing. It helps if that's something that I cultivate. And I use the word cultivate because I like to work in the garden and grow stuff, but cultivating something takes work. You can't just plant it and leave it there. You've got to water it, and you've got to weed it, and you've got to keep bugs off of it, and you've got to take care of it. And our mental well-being and our spiritual health, I think, work that way. And this has to be part of your routine. This has to be part of the daily routine. And so whatever spirituality means to you as an individual, it's important to make it a priority. We're not just a body. We're a body and a soul, and a lot of what we already talked about, I think, includes issues of the soul. You know, pain, suffering. That's where that hits us. So finding meaning in that makes it easier to go in and deal with it every day, because we're making that choice when it comes to taking care of our patients and our fellow CAP members. Spend time with people that matter the most to you, quality time with family and friends. After all of this COVID stuff, it's all about people. That's the source of stress. We worry about people, we worry about exposures. Make sure you have the good people experiences and not just all the bad people experiences. And call for help. Ask for reinforcements. It doesn't have to be go see a counselor. Any therapeutic presence helps. And different people bring different qualities to the table. My wife, if I need to download, if I need to vent, I go to my wife. She listens. Okay, I'm good. If I need to laugh about something stupid, I go to my brother. I can always rely on something stupid from my brother. But the key is surround yourself with people who are going to be a therapeutic presence. I don't know if you've not seen this. This is one of the new squatters that might be coming out. This is the mission coffee officer. I love this as I take a drink, especially if you're on mission-based staff. Just don't do unhealthy things to the extreme. We've had a lot of organizational challenges in the last year. These virtual meetings, they're not the same as meeting face-to-face. You're meeting through a screen, and if that's your world, you get the Facebook syndrome, and it's depressing. We had challenges in operations with emergency services training and maintaining pilot proficiency, but we did get some things done. I think cadet programs was probably the one that was the hardest hit, and I think the membership numbers show that. And what we're talking about with HSOs is our critical incident stress. A lot of this has been kind of in the context of occupation, but there's a lot of organizational specific stuff too. And this has been the thing for me. Has your service in Civil Air Patrol as an HSO increased your stress or decreased your stress in the last year or two? It's increased my stress. I've dealt with every manner of question you can imagine. Here's some of them. Here's just some of the examples. But that's not the big thing. The big thing is actually answering the question I put up there. What do you think about? All too often, what we're hearing, especially with limited data on a lot of different things, is how do you feel about? And as HSOs, as professionals, we can't do that. As there was a letter back in September, I think it was a joint letter between the American Board of Family Medicine, American Board of Internal Medicine, American Board of Pediatrics, I think. They sent out this unified letter to all their diplomats that basically said, if you're disseminating misinformation, you're threatening not only your professional credential, but your license to practice. Apparently this came around as a function of some credentialed diplomat spreading some misinformation about vaccinations. In any event, unethical, unprofessional, don't do it. Your professional bodies will come after you. We have to limit information that we give to that which is factual, honest, and evidence-based. And that's been a real challenge, is trying to evaluate evidence with all of this stuff. That'll continue to be a challenge. As we get more data, it gets easier. But remember that you have to have evidence behind the recommendations that you're making. As an aside, if what we're doing aligns with what the Air Force is doing and with what the CDC is doing, I think we're going to be okay. You can always rely on Air Force and CDC with respect to references for policies related to health, wellness, and our organizational's fitness philosophy. Okay. And the question is, what's the long-term effect? We don't know what the long-term effects of any of this stuff is because there just isn't data. It's not there. We're starting to see some data. We're starting to see, I guess, the tip of the iceberg. But icebergs can be a bad thing. And the effects to these kinds of things are usually so great in magnitude, so wide in their scope, and have effects that are so long lasting that it ends up becoming part of our cultural consciousness. And I think it will with respect to COVID. Only time will tell. Sometimes the better play is to communicate what we don't know, as opposed to guessing about what we do know. Okay. Any questions up to this point? We're going to go through just briefly a little legalese in 79.1, and then we'll wrap it up. So the new reg 79.1 is that we don't do anything as a CAP HSO other than basic first aid stuff. We are not permitted to act in the role of a healthcare provider during the performance of our duties. We don't interpret medical information. We don't perform physical examinations outside of first aid stuff. Interestingly enough, I don't think taking a set of vitals is part of the first aid standard in OSHA, which is interesting in any event. Medical care will be limited to emergency first aid training. Now, that's an important thing. Everyone who gives it needs to be certified in it. And that's going to be a requirement pretty much of all HSOs to be first aid certified. If we are required by law to render aid by virtue of our professional credentials, that accounts a lot of EMTs, MDs, DOs, we will be doing so as an agent of our licensing body and not that of the organization. This separates the legal implications of what we're doing from the organization. In any event, you as an HSO are going to fulfill your professional obligations of care at the highest level that you need to. We talked about promoting the policies of the Air Force and Centers of Disease Control with related to those philosophies, and all health service personnel will be trained in CPR, AED, first aid, and bloodborne pathogens. Excuse me. We do have Good Samaritan laws in West Virginia, fortunately, and all other legalese aside, the rule of thumb is always you take good care of your patient and it'll all work out in the end. You do what's best for the patient, and it'll all be okay. So we got to look towards the future. What do you want to see in the wing? What kind of resources do you want? Do you want education and training events, workshops, recognition support? Maybe we need a Wing HSO of the Year award, especially if we expand the ranks with a whole bunch of HSOs. That would be great. Networking opportunities, training or funding for training. You tell me, as the Wing HSO, what you need, and we're going to try to find the resources to make it happen. Our HSOs are a population of very dedicated and very competent people, and they give a lot to the organization. I want to make sure that we're giving back to you and have what you have what you need to continue to give to the organization, but to make it a fulfilling experience along the way. All right, now I can see everybody again. Now we have some time for questions. I know we've kind of gone over a little bit here with the presentation, but I'm a long-winded person and you know how that goes. Questions, our commander.
I don't have a question, I have a comment. Thank you so much. This has been an excellent presentation, and I think you should even consider looking at this for the Mid-Atlantic Region Conference or the National Conference. You did an amazing job. Thank you so much, and thank you for what you have done for the remobilization team and keeping all of us in West Virginia Wings safe. Thank you very much.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you, ma'am. Does anybody have any questions about the specialty track or any input on resources or things of that sort? If you do and you want to plug them into the chat, that's fine. If you want to email me, that's fine. I'm going to put my email address in the chat right now for those of you who don't have it. Because I'm always up for collaborating with my HSOs.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to kind of bolster the fact that, you know, the introducing the cadets, especially to these allied health pathways, I guess is the best way to put it, is really important right now, because I'm sure you've seen it on your end, but, you know, the industry is just hemorrhaging people. And, you know, especially, you know, in the emergency services side, which I'm most familiar with, we dovetail into nursing at a certain level, but, you know, the pay is low. The work level has been exacerbated by COVID, as yours has too. But I think, you know, talking about that shadow program that you were discussing before COVID kind of shut things down again, you know, I think it's a really good idea to get these kids, the cadets, sorry, interested in, you know, the health professions that have sometimes been overlooked by CAP in lieu of, you know, our main focus being on going into the military. So I think it's a really good idea to help bolster those pathways into those careers.
I think it's extremely important that when it comes to influencing our younger members, that where careers are concerned, you gotta like it. You gotta love doing this because it's not easy. There are lots of different challenges, and even if you land some really well-paying job somewhere, if it's a nightmare, you're not going to stick with it. You're gonna find something else that makes you happy, and adjust your lifestyle and make less money and go on. And it's something that I try to instill in my medical students and my nurse practitioner students that come through and rotate with us, is that you got to find a place where you're happy and where you can see yourself over the long term. And that's getting tougher and tougher. That's one of the reasons that I'm kind of a big fan of staying in private practice and working in private practice and championing those models, is that you have control over what those priorities are. But if you're in a setting that's production driven, if you're in a setting that's constantly resource strapped, and you go in day to day and feel like you're sacrificing quality, that's not going to last for most people. That I think that as medical professionals, that offends our sense of justice and excellence, and I don't think it'll stand for very long. So there's a lot to experience there beyond the nitty gritty of, okay, well, what's it like to work in a lab, or what's it like to actually see people in the hospital and manage a ventilator, and you know, what's it like to work in the hospice house and help someone with terminal restlessness, or it's just so many things. But the goal there is to give our younger members a diverse experience and something that they can capitalize on in the future. And if it's successful, build a program that's easy to translate to a clinic-based nurse practitioner in another region, or a hospitalist, or a pathologist, or somebody working in a lab, or, you know, we want to try to build that as something that's going to be sustainable and a national kind of thing. And, you know, and maybe that's thinking big, but we got to start somewhere. So we're going to figure out what ends up working on a smaller scale, and put it out to our working groups, and share some best practices with it. And hopefully it'll be something that kind of revitalizes healthcare stuff. It's been a tough couple of years, and, you know, I've known a lot of people to hang it up in the last several months. Just say, you know, it's not worth it anymore. And that's sad. We can make it worth it to some degree. It's just a question of getting creative. So thank you for that. Any other comments or questions? We're getting to be about out of time. I want to send you off to some other sessions, and I'm going to jump in some myself. So thank you all very much for your attention, and of course for your service. Continue to, you know, take care of yourselves, as right now kind of your most important patient. You don't take good care of yourselves, you're not going to take good care of anybody else. And you know, sometimes we kind of marginalize ourselves for whenever we have the time. So don't do that. Be proactive, and stay resilient. Go on to some other sessions, and thanks for joining with us today.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all.